While the deaths of children might not be enough to spur Republicans to action, the threat of losing an entire block of voters just might be. In their so-called autopsy report, the party said it needs to reach out to minorities, particularly Latinos. And now, what do you know? They're willing to come to a deal on immigration, a big issue for that very same group. House Minority Leader Eric Cantor said today that his party is behind immigration reform, and he's doing it for, wait for it, for the kids. He actually said he was looking out for children, even as his Republican colleagues lambasted the president for politicizing Newtown. That is truly infuriating. Here is Eric Cantor.
We've got an opportunity, I think, to come together on one point, and that is the kids. If a kid was brought here by his parents or her parents, unbeknownst to them, and know no other place than home, than America's home, why wouldn't we want to give them a path to citizenship?
Mr. President, stop politicizing Newtown. But this is about the kids. God, it's frustrating. Meanwhile, the president was on Univision, where he called for Congress to take action, and he gave them a specific timeline for doing it.
I'm actually optimistic that when they get back, they will introduce a bill. And my expectation is that we'll actually see a bill on the floor of the Senate next month.
That timeline is so crucial. If negotiations go on too long, Republicans who are seeking re-election next year might get scared off. And if that's not enough of a reason, perhaps the will of the people is. A Pew poll out today finds that 7 out of 10 Americans say there should be a pathway to citizenship. Even among Republicans, 53% agree. But for some Republican voters, the bipartisan immigration plan just isn't conservative enough. And this fall, they plan to show their frustration at the polls. Senator Lindsey Graham is now facing opposition from Tea Partiers in his home state of South Carolina. He's been working hard to burnish his conservative image, but his place on the Gang of Eight might end up hurting him. Because for Tea Party voters, doing the right thing for the country simply isn't enough. Joining me now to look at immigration reform and what it will mean for the country and the Republican Party is Jason Johnson. He's the chief political correspondent for Politics365.com. He comes to us from Atlanta, Georgia tonight. Jason, welcome back into the War Room.
Glad to be here.
So, Jason, there seems to be some consensus forming now. What's going to be in that immigration bill?
Well, it'll probably have some sort of pathway to citizenship. The part that Eric Cantor isn't talking about, because this is the part that's difficult, is, okay, you love the kids, that's great and wonderful, but what are you going to do about their parents? Parents who came here illegally, even if their children are born in the United States and are technically American citizens, you still have to find some way for those parents to be taken care of or for those parents to stay. So that's going to be the really difficult part one way or another. There's going to be a path to citizenship. That's just not what the GOP wants to talk about right now.
And so, you know, going on this sort of the split family idea here, what are some of the offers that Democrats have been making in terms of concessions on that? Do you know any of that, or can you imagine what they might be?
Yeah, well, there's a way of sort of graduating the process in. There's a way of making people permanent residents, but still not legal citizens. You know, those are some of the things that are being offered. There are actually additional taxes that people might have to pay, fees they might have to pay, citizenship courses they might have to pay. There are a lot of different things that come into play. But I think what's important to remember here, this is not a panacea for the Republican Party. The very same Pew poll that came out that said that Republicans are in favor of a path to citizenship also showed that most Republicans don't like immigrants. They still think that immigrants are taking their jobs. They still think that immigrants are problematic and that they're lazy and that they're difficult. So this isn't saving everything. It's just one step in what needs to probably be a generation-long process.
Yeah, and that's important to remember. But I guess, you know, like they say, the first step in a long journey, and that's not what they say, but they say it's like I George Bushed that. But the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, something like that. But let's go back to President Obama and Eric Cantor, who are signaling that Congress could get this done before the fall. Does this timetable seem likely to you, Jason?
It's possible. It's possible. Look, we have a lot of different issues on the table right now. And if you had asked me 2 months ago, I would say, you know, immigration had a snowball's chance in Jamaica, but I think it's got a pretty good chance now. You know, we're clearly not going to see anything happen with guns. We may or may not see anything happen with gay marriage. But in order for Congress to actually look like they've kind of done something and haven't been completely disruptive to a reelected president and his mandate, I do think we could see something done on immigration reform in time for the fall, certainly by the 2014 elections. And so it's a possibility. I think it's a greater possibility than those other two policy issues.
Well, hey, they had a bobsled team in Jamaica, so I guess anything's really possible.
And a
let's
great
talk
movie.
And a great movie, obviously. Tell me about guns a little bit, though, because I don't know if I feel the same way about guns passing as you do. What do you feel about the likelihood of gun legislation?
Yeah, I don't think anything's going to get passed. I mean, I
really.
This is what I find fascinating. You've had members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats, flip sides on gay marriage like crazy. I mean, they're flipping like hotcakes on gay marriage over the last 2.5 weeks. And yet, gun control, where it's a life and death issue, people are still gripping to the old way of thinking. And so that suggests to me that there's too much money, too much anger, too much resistance to see any fundamental and substantive changes in gun policy in America. And I think it's a shame. I think that the fact that people can't see past whatever's going to end up in their pocketbooks or their resistance to this president, I think it's a shame. But unfortunately, I don't think we're moving at all on gun issues. We'll see how something happen with immigration and gay marriage before guns.
You know, that's different than what Colin Goddard, who was just on the show, had to say about guns. He seems a little more optimistic. He's been there on the ground. Do you think this is all about money then? I mean, you talk about gays, you talk about guns, and you're saying, you know, the guns aren't going to happen. Do you think it's fully about money? Does that mean Mike Bloomberg is actually now losing to the NRA?
Well, yeah, it's always about money. I mean, look, gay rights is about money. It's about, you've got organizations that say we're not going to support you if you don't support gay marriage. And the NRA, we got to think past the NRA and realize this is part of the military industrial complex in America. Guns are just one smarter part of this. This goes into prisons, this goes into private security, this goes into the military. And so the fact that you have a large number of Republicans and Democrats who aren't just afraid of having the NRA go against them, they're afraid of losing the NRA's money. So I don't see us having the kind of substantive change that we need. Will there be small piecemeal changes? Of course they will. Is what Michael Bloomberg talking about right now important? Of course it is. But are we going to see the kind of change that mayors against illegal guns are asking for, despite the fact that they are credible and objective? I don't think so, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. I hope you're wrong on that issue. I really hope the background checks at the very least are going to happen. But you make some great points there about what controls all of this, and it does go back to the dollars. I just think the fear of the NRA, Jason, is so overblown, and I wish that weren't the case. Jason Johnson is at politics365.com. Thanks so much for joining us from Atlanta tonight, Jason. Coming up, it's all quite simple. Vast amounts of money is flowing into right-wing think tanks who come up with terrible ideas that are then passed along to your local officials, who pass terrible laws with which you get stuck. To which we say, thank God Lee Fang of The Nation keeps an eye on all of it. Plus, from lobster pots to pot and lobster, Maine is poised to become the next state to legalize marijuana. Vacation land indeed. And later, author Tracy Thompson's passion is the South, and she spent most of her life trying to understand it. We'll speak with her as our series The March Goes On continues. It's The War Room on a Thursday, and we will be right back.